Welcome to the CyberJA podcast, the place where we discuss all things cybersecurity and GRC. I am Richard Perry, your cybersecurity and GRC enthusiast. The aim of this podcast is to provide a meaningful value added platform via which upcoming cybersecurity professionals like yourself can gain insights from various topics covering cybersecurity and GRC that will enable them to become professionals that the industry demands. Stay tuned for what next on the CyberJA podcast. Passionate about protecting organizations from cyber threats is the tagline for our guest, Robert Cooper. Robert, nice to have you on the CyberJA.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation.
Great, and I definitely look forward to our conversation. And Robert, you have quite a, in my perspective, quite a phenomenal story as it relates to your ascension into cybersecurity. And at times, I strongly believe that when you communicate by talking or speaking, at times you're able to verbalize a lot more than when you actually write. So that's one of the main reasons why I'm actually having this conversation. And I could not resist connecting with you based on a post you made on LinkedIn that captivated me on how your journey into cyber began. And I also believe that there is a lot of value, nuggets of information that that you have actually placed in that post that I believe can be beneficial to upcoming cybersecurity professionals. So I definitely need you to share with us, your journey into this field of cybersecurity.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I've had looking around and reading some of the other stories, especially on the Simply Cyber Community Challenge. I think I do come from a different background, and that's in the fact that um, I don't really have a traditional IT background. I started Well, I've always been interested in technology and stuff that started back in high school. With I've always been very science and math based. Really, I started off wanting to get into to the aerospace field, but didn't really make a lot of that out of the high school experience. In fact, instead of going into the Air Force or the aerospace field, I ended up joining the Army as a reservist my junior year, and I became a supply specialist at that time. And so I did basic in between my junior and my senior year, and then came back and did my senior year of high school, and then went back to Fort Lee, Virginia, and did quartermaster school. And for my to really kind of start my time in the Army, and I really enjoyed my time at quartermaster school. The way that the schooling is set up there, and the emphasis on not memorizing information, but learning how to look up the information was really a big key to me, or a big aha moment of this is really how education works, right? Coming out of the high school model of you're gonna memorize all this information and learn it on tests. The U.S. Army Quartermaster School was about, hey, we don't expect you to memorize all of this. We expect you to be able to know how to find this information. And so that was a really big key for me. Now, my career in the Army was fairly short lived. I was a reservist overall for 8 years, but active really for only about 3 years of that before they disbanded my units in Aurora, Colorado. And then from there, I started into my college life, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do at that point in time. So, but what really drove me in uh, was a love for the mountains, of being up in the mountains and nature and being around ski areas. And so I got a degree in applied science for ski area operations. And that's really about like how ski areas operate, how to manage them, how to run them, like the planning that goes into them, and which is pretty multifaceted. And I became more on the operational side of doing uh, of being a snowcat operator and grooming slopes and transporting people around on the mountain. And that really, kind of was my first career of working in the mountains and really much more towards the tourist industry and but the operational side of that, and how that all functions. And then from there, I my other job during the summertime was in the restaurant industry, and I started off at a low level, washing dishes and then waiting tables and bartending, and then but always to like kind of moving up to that next level. And so then I got to the points where a lot of the owners of the businesses that I was working for relied on me to supervise other people inside of the restaurants, and so that led me into restaurant management. Though restaurant management in Colorado at that time was fairly limited, so I went out to Chicago and I got into restaurant management in that realm, and that was another really big step in my professional development, because up until that point in time, like I was passionate about what I was doing, and I cared about the organizations I was working for. I wasn't a very good manager, and then like I was really fortunate that that my manager, my area director, was extremely good at what he did and about shifting the focus on what the company, like on what I was trying to do for the company, and getting me to realize um, that professional development means developing all of those around you. And it started with my staff and understanding who they were and where they were coming from, and what their needs and expectations were, and how I could support them. And then, so I moved up pretty quickly in that aspect, starting off as a manager. And within 13 months, I was a general manager for a restaurant company in around the Chicago area. Well, it's a nationwide company, but but I worked around the Chicago area, and so I became a general manager. And that next step was again another really big one in my career, as far as moving from um, just managing the staff and developing them to managing other managers and supporting them. And again, another really big growth step in the fact of like realizing that by helping them do better and progressing them in their career, I as well was developing myself and my skills and my talents and my drive to continue to move forward. And so I did that for a couple of years, and I moved on to another big restaurant corporation, the Cheesecake Factory, and worked around with them, opening up a couple new stores. And again, all along that step, moving to more and more responsibility, higher levels of development, and again, like, and this was another big step for me as far as like I did, and this is really where my military experience really started to tie back in to my restaurant experience, because there was a lot of logistics. There was a lot of inventory control, a lot of systems control, a lot of maintaining those operational aspects to what was going on a daily basis. Um, because that's how you make an organization successful, is by having those benchmarks and those settings and those operational controls in place, and then managing those. And so after the restaurant industry, which brought me back to Colorado again. I I was managing an office, a medical dispensary in Colorado at that time, and but didn't really enjoy the environments that I was working in. I didn't really enjoy the owners that I was working for at that time. So I jumped over to doing Lyft and Uber as a driver, and which was a really good step for me because it allowed me to kind of take a step back and and realized I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. It wasn't making me happy. There wasn't really a drive there for me anymore. And and really kind of starts uh, being able to decompress that again out of that whole situation, um, and start thinking about what I wanted to do with my life. Now that journey took me a kind of a long time. Um, in my family life at that time started up. I got married during that time and had a child, and then that again made me realize that's what I really, that the big focus on what I wanted to do was have that work-life balance that, especially as a restaurant manager, was extremely lacking in my life. Um, and so I've done that for a while, and then a few years back, I had a discussion with a guy, one of my passengers that I picked up, and we were talking about, um, really, we were talking about my daughter and the school that she goes to, and the reason why she was going there. She goes to a trilingual school, and why that was a big focus from for me and my wife, and because of like how fundamentally uh, uh, it changes the development of her, both her language skills, but also it is a cultural awareness aspect as well. And so after that conversation, he said, "Hey, uh, have you ever thought about getting into cybersecurity?" And I said, "I haven't really, but I have looked at, like I had been thinking about what my next career step was going to be." He says, "Look, like from our conversation, the way that you think about things, I think, lends you very well to this industry." And I said, "You know what? That's very interesting. I'll look into that." And so I started. That's what I started to do. I started looking around, and I've always been like technology curious, right? So I always, played around with programming the VCR when I was 9 years old, right? Um, programming the TVs, programming the DVRs, and playing around on computers. And even though I didn't have like a lot of computer experience, I played around with it a little bit. Um, I had many, like several of the quite a few of the different gaming consoles, and and again always interested in that. Cell phones the same way. I was always like, "Oh, hey, look, here's a new cell phone. Here's a new feature. What does it do? How do you unlock it? How do you utilize it more?" Um, right, and then especially when Google came on the scene, and YouTube, and you could start looking up like, "Hey, how can what features am I not unlocking in my technology? How can how can I use my phone more effectively? How can I, use my laptop more effectively? Like, what does this program do? What does this software package do?" And so I've always been interested in that aspect, but it's never really been a huge part of my career portion at that time. Though, again, it always interacts in that aspect. When I was in the restaurant industry, moving to a point of sale system, which was fairly new at the at the end of the 90s, was another big step, right? And then I got into when I was working for Cheesecake Factory, the kitchen management system was a huge piece of technology that again was a very new piece of the industry at that time, and working with that and seeing the different things that it could do and how you could leverage it to increase efficiency and help, and not only just efficiency, but how it helps people do their job easier, right? Like I know companies really like to leverage software and technology to make things more efficient and to help their bottom line, but it really happens because of how it helps people do their job more effectively and easier. And when it doesn't, when software packages don't help people do it more effectively or easier, uh, then they fail, right? They just don't work for very long, and people realize, hey, this really isn't a very big piece of technology. Um, so starting to look around, so I started into cyber. So I decided I wanted to do cybersecurity because I really started to become interested in questions such as, uh, you know, how does my phone keep me safe from people stealing my personal information. And with companies again advertising, hey, this paying by your phone or using the chip on a credit card keeps you more safe. Well, how does that do that? Like like it's great that you tell me that it does, but I want to know how that functions, how that works, right? Um, and so wanting to do those information that answer those questions led me from just getting into like I find it interesting on like how to fix things in IT, right? And I do that for my daughter's school these days. but but and that's an like I so I like the IT aspect, but I'm really interested of the security aspect. How is our privacy being protected? How do these systems work together to protect not just individuals but society as a whole? And so that led me into really starting my journey into IT and cybersecurity. And I started with um, uh, Google's IT support professional certification, which was a really good class. I will say that Google puts out some really good training material out there. The way that it's presented and the way that they structure it and the labs that are involved with it are really flows really well. They do a really good job. And I did these on Coursera, which I found to be a really good platform as well. It was affordable for me. I could do the pardon me the subscription, which was like $65 a month. And so it was really affordable. I was able to do it in my time frame. Again, working full time as an Uber and Lyft driver, and then having a young daughter and trying to maintain that balance. This was a really good way for me to accomplish my educational goals. And so then after that, and I wanted to get into cybersecurity, but I wanted to have the foundation of like, how does technology, like how is it really built on, right? And so starting with the IT aspect of like, how do you build out a computer? What are the main components of a computer? What's the OSI model? How does network communication happens? Was really fundamental, and for me to understand, like taking my knowledge of technology to the next level. From there, I started with the IBM cybersecurity analyst certification again through Coursera, which was a good course, but not the presentation on it is not my favorites. I think that they could do a much better job. I mean, with such a large company and such a major player in both technology and cybersecurity, I would like to see them really increase their product of what they do for their training. Now, I will say that the biggest plus that they have in their training is that they give you their labs working with their sim is really good, and especially they have an AI aspect to their sim that was really interesting to work through and play around with. So I think they did a good job that way, but they're just like, it's a lecture model is kind of what they use, and it's not very, I don't think it's very engaging in that aspect. But I got through that, and then towards the end of that, I was like, okay, I finished this Google IT certification and this IBM cybersecurity certification. What do I do now? Right? Like, how do I get into the industry now? I have this. I'm looking around at jobs, right? And it's all like bachelor's degrees or 5
Exactly. I think that's a big question that everybody wants the answer to. How do I actually start? How do I move? How do I pivot my way into? So you're definitely on point.
right? So like 4 or 5 years of experience. Do you have Security Plus? Do you have this certification? Do you have this? Do you programming languages? Again, I don't have any programming language exposure at this point in time. I'm currently taking Dr. Gerald Ozier's GRC masterclass, and I'm halfway through with that. When I finish that up, my next class is going to be a Python language class to kind of get an understanding of that. But like, I started looking around, and I was like, oh, so what do I do next? And I came across a YouTube video for Simply Cyber, and I watched it about like how to get into the industry with no experience. And I was like, well, this is really interesting. And so from there, at the end of that video, he's like, look, um, I do this daily cyber threat briefing every day. If you're looking to get into the industry or you're in the industry, jump in with us and and start to learn about what's going on in the industry. And that was a game changer for me. It just really like one, it started to build my knowledge and the vernacular around what's going on and the the terms that are used and what those actually mean, right? You can read through the book and see like what the OS model or the CIA triad and stuff like that, but to see actually what that means inside of the industry was really key for me on his videos. And then I also felt like I found my tribe, that sense of community that that he has really built, or that the community has really built, has also been a game changer for me. Like I feel like I found a group of people who are going through the same struggles that I am, that they're along the same path that I am. And no matter where you're at in the industry, whether you're already in there, or you're switching careers, or you're making a career change like I am, later in my life, like just a lot of support there, and a lot of helpful content there. And so I started watching those daily cyber threat briefings. Realized that it seemed to me that like getting a Security Plus certification was really foundational to really presenting myself with a good knowledge base, on my resume and also for the industry, and very helpful as well. So I studied for that all of last summer and passed it this last November, and then from there, again though, at the end of that Security Plus certification, the question was for me, what do I want to do in the industry? What's pulling me in, what's interesting me, what aspects. When people say, when I tell people that I want to get into cybersecurity, they're like, oh wow, that's a great field. And but I they're like, oh, so do you break into systems? Do you what do you do? I'm like, no, I'm not a pen tester, right? But that is part of the industry. Pardon
And I
me.
also think that's one of the misconceptions when it comes on to cybersecurity, that it's all about red teaming, blue teaming. And there are so many, I mean, other avenues within cybersecurity. It's a very wide space that you can actually find your niche to actually excel and build your particular desired skill set, as you have rightly mentioned.
Yeah, and so so for me, like why the technology aspect does interest me, I really like listening to uh, uh, Dr. Gerald Osher talk about GRC and kind of how that functions and how that works. Really spoke to me because that's really what I do, or that's really where I have excelled throughout my career paths in different aspects. Is I manage people and processes extremely well. Like while I was in the army, of like the inventory and management of logistics in that aspect, and then especially in the restaurants industry, of really looking at the daily operations of an organization and realizing, hey, we can do this a little bit better, we can do this a little bit differently, this technology can help us do this a little bit more effectively. Let me show you how to use the point of sale system a little bit more effectively. Let me show you how to use the kitchen management system a little bit more effectively. And so that's really where I'm heading with cybersecurity, is GRC, because I think that it's about putting those procedures and policies, one, creating them, and then two, putting them into place, and then start utilizing them to make the process better, and then also to help people be better, more successful with what they're trying to accomplish.
Awesome. I mean, quite a dynamic and captivating story in terms of your journey into cybersecurity. You have actually touched so many important areas that I would definitely want to actually dissect. And if you recognize while you were actually sharing all of this, I was actually making notes, pointers on all the things that you have actually been saying so far. I mean, you have actually touched on so many areas, talking about mentorship, leadership. I mean, building your people skills. I mean, your passion, knowing your passion, having the curiosity to learn new things, finding those resources. And there's so many resources that you can actually engage with in terms of actually building your skill set, setting the right goals, ensuring that you have the necessary fundamentals. I mean, talking about your listening to those daily cyber briefs to keep up to date with the dynamics of the industry. That's also one of the things that you have to do to build your skill set. And very importantly, I've mentioned that regardless of your background or whether you're coming from a traditional or non-traditional, the there lies a possibility for you to actually advance and to excel in this cybersecurity path. And I mean, this is one conversation that I'm at a point whereby we cannot, there definitely has to be a part two. I mean, I'm so captivated by all that you're saying. Is almost like you have actually given that introduction to where you want to go next for a part two. I am so captivated. Now, thinking about all that you have said so far, what have been the most, I mean, difficult or challenging moments for you in terms of actually uh, excelling or moving forward? Thinking about the fact that you're coming from a non-traditional route into cybersecurity.
Yeah, well, so that's like that. I think that's been one of the biggest uh, challenges that I've been looking to overcome is that non-tech background, right? And how do you build those skills? Well, you have to build them slowly, right? Is the answer. Like there's not a there's not an easy button to get past that aspect, and so that's why I went. I initially started with an intro into cybersecurity class from the University of London on Coursera, and going through that class, I was like, "This is definitely the area I want to go into," but I don't know that I have the information. I don't know if I have the technical uh, um, knowledge base to move forward. So going back and doing the Google IT support certification was really big for me on feeling like, okay, I'm not an imposter in this industry, right? Which we all know is a big aspect um, of this field. But starting to develop from that, and then I about 6 months ago, I started my daughter's school was looking for an IT support person, and so I interviewed with them about that, and I said, like I have this I have pretty much sure that I have the skills of what you're looking for to accomplish this because it's a really small school, and what most of it is, setting up laptops, re-imaging laptops, uh, installing projectors, making sure that they're functioning, solving any type of network connectivity with the Wi-Fi or with the network itself, and like I can do that, but my bigger skill set is that I'm leaning into the cybersecurity field. But that has really been extremely helpful getting into that organization or in that position, and again seeing it from the IT aspect and learning a little bit more of the fundamentals of the industry through the IT aspect, um, and then also starting to leverage my cybersecurity knowledge base on helping them grow as an organization as well. Uh, like I just rolled out multi-factor authentication last week, and it's been hit and miss. It's still a little rough of a thing because it's not a focus. It's not something that they knew that they really needed. And then two, uh, it, the teachers at the school. My daughter goes to a language school, so there's only one that's a native English speaking teacher. All the other ones, their native language is either Mandarin or Spanish, and so the language barrier at times on being able to communicate the importance of these different aspects has also been a challenge, which has been really helpful in my growth as a person in this industry as well. Of like, okay, how do I take a step back and help them understand what we're trying to accomplish here? So like the technology aspects of not coming from that background, really like finding a like this IT support position has really helped me kind of like move into the field that I really want to go into, with the GRC role, and really start to overcome like the difficulties a bit, but they're still there, right? I'm still applying for jobs where it's an entry level position, but again, they're looking for, I saw a position yesterday for an entry level position that they were looking for 10 years of experience, managing IT systems. And I was like, well, I'm not sure how that's an entry level position. But a lot of jobs are that way, right? So a lot of the job postings are that way. And a lot of companies are looking for people, at the entry level spots that have a tremendous amount of IT backgrounds. But I think that, for me, the way that I'm trying to overcome that is just by jumping in and finding those opportunities to gain some hands-on experience. And again, Gerald Auger talks a lot about like, look, if you don't feel like you have these skills, start doing some home labs on specifically those skills that you want to learn more about, right? And he talks like XM Cyber has some really good courses that I've taken. I know that Black Hills training, anti-siphoning training with John Strand is doing some really good courses out there these days. So that's the road I'm trying to go down, is trying to do, because I don't have the time to do a 4-year program. I just don't, with family life and a full-time job at this aspect. I just don't have the time to do a bachelor's program. And I don't think that it's necessary. I think that there's quite a few opportunities there of doing, XM Cyber Exposure Management course, anti-siphon SOC analyst core skills, right? Coursera has a lot of different courses that you can take. IBM themselves have really good like SIM classes that you can take. So I think there's companies out there. AWS, same way. AWS has really good courses on how you can learn about what they're doing with network security, or how to manage their systems, or how to configure their systems. So I think that my route is by piecing together different aspects of what I'm really curious on learning, and that kind of changes. It's interesting to me because it changes every couple of months of like, hey, I really want to go down through the GRC routes, and so I'm headed down that way. But I'm like, you know what? I'm learning that having a basic understanding of programming language on any level is a big plus. I may not use it a whole lot, but if I can just, if it gives me a better understanding of how the software engineers or the network engineers are configuring firewalls or next gen firewalls or switches, then that gives me a better understanding of how I can support them when I'm managing policies or writing policies in the GRC space.
Great. I mean, so captivating, so enlightening. I mean, you have actually shared so much, I mean, value as it relates to your trajectory into cybersecurity. And for sure, we definitely must have a part 2 to this conversation. And I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. I mean, so many nuggets of information that you have actually added in terms of value to the cyber community, which no doubt they will appreciate in terms of gaining some insights into actually taking their career to that next level. So, Robert, it was indeed a pleasure having you on the Cyber JA podcast.
But thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me on, and I really enjoyed sharing my journey into this area. And yeah, I look forward to it. I'd love to do a part two